Morning, everyone. I'm just going to go through the answers to yesterday's lesson first of all, before I introduce lesson 4. So, lesson 3, which is Wednesday, yesterday's lesson, let's go through task 1. So, the first thing I asked you was to look at these phrases from the text. Think about what the words in yellow mean, so unlock them first, and then think about why the writer's chosen those words. So the first one I did for you. Thank you to those of you who've submitted your work. Really, really good to see you all engaging. And can I just remind you to comment under the video just so I know that you've seen it and that you're doing this lesson. Okay, so let's have a look. Her face was like glass. We've got a simile here, like glass. So I'd be thinking, well, what is glass? So in my head, I'm picturing what does glass look like, because that's going to give me a clue as to why the writers use that word. So lots of you said, and you're spot on, this suggests her face was smooth or shiny, or you could have synonyms for smooth and shiny, but it's suggesting that her face is really so smooth that it looks like glass, or shiny that it looks like glass. Daylight flooded back, and the word that we're thinking about is the word flooded. And the answer to that is this suggests the daylight came back really quickly, or came back quickly on the train. The clue really is the word flooded. If water floods through the window, it means it comes through really, really quickly. And I know we've spoken about that in class, and that's obviously different to a word like trickled or dripped, which suggests that it comes through a lot slower. The voice over the train speaker garbled something. So you needed to know really what the word garbled mean if someone's garbling something, and you would need to unlock that first. And the answer to that is this suggests the voice was unclear, or you might have had the word distorted, which means that you can't really understand what the person's saying. And the last one, she heaved her backpack. So you'd need to know what heaved means. If someone heaves something, it means they're pulling it, possibly because it's heavy. I know that somebody submitted an answer saying this suggests that the backpack's heavy. I've put this suggests that she pulled her backpack, possibly because it's heavy. Okay, then task 2. Now you couldn't really go wrong here, as long as obviously your questions were from or something to do with the text. So here's 3 that I put. All of the answers I've seen were correct because they were all been to do with the text. I wonder why Poppy is travelling to this place. I wonder why she's by herself. And I wonder who the woman was that she saw on the train and whether she'll appear again further in the book. And task 3. All of the answers I've seen were really, really good. So what were your impressions of Poppy? Not the train, not the woman, but we're just looking at Poppy from what we've read. So you could say she's brave because she's on a train by herself. She's anxious or she's worried, and my evidence for that would be from the text, Poppy had been worried for a long time. And then thinking about the end of the text, when she's seen this woman and she picks up a purse that's been left on the train, you could actually say that she's unkind or she's naughty. She's doing, you wouldn't normally steal things from people because that's not the right thing to do. And my evidence would be Poppy snatched the purse and stuffed it into one of her wonderfully big pockets, which obviously suggests that she could be, well, she's doing something that she shouldn't. Okay, so moving on to the 4th lesson of the week. Just to recap the text, which is obviously quite difficult because normally in class we'd read it again. So we know there's a girl called Poppy. She's going on a train. She's seen a strange woman. She's been through 2 tunnels. And she's just found this purse that isn't hers, but she's decided to take it anyway. So let's have a look and carry on reading the text. Remember, at any point you can obviously pause, you can go back to the text. And what I didn't show you is actually this is a picture of Poppy. So going back to your task from the other day, this is in the book here, the picture of Poppy. Obviously it's got no colour, and your drawings were much better than this one because you all had colour and you labelled it. And we've obviously got a picture here of her putting the purse in her pocket. Right, let's carry on reading. So, take the key from around my wrist, Gran told Poppy when they arrived back at her house. Poppy had visited Gran just once before, when she was 3 or 4, and Mum had driven her up for the day. After that, Gran took the train down to visit them a handful of times, but otherwise Poppy only really got to talk to her on the phone. It didn't matter, though, because Gran's house smelled the same way that she remembered Gran did, of dark wood, musk, and sugar. Go to the cabinet by the fireside and open it just a little. Poppy did as she was told. Now, using only one hand, lift the lid from the jar wrapped in cheesecloth. Poppy obeyed. Churchill, Gran's miniature pig, sniffed anxiously around the kitchen and then charged through the door towards his basket, where he curled up cosily by the hearth. A fat log of wood surrounded by bundles of dry twigs blazed silently. Mum always said she could never remember Gran's house without a fire chattering away in the lounge room. Suds was always 7 degrees colder than anywhere else, she would say. And if you didn't like the weather, all you had to do was look in a different direction, because the temperature in Suds was as changeable as the wind. Find the tweezers in the cabinet and take 2 lumps of sugar. Grandma squinted across the room over the top of her glasses. Bravo, she said. Now hold the sugar lumps in your hand as tight as you can without crushing them. Lock the cabinet. Bring me back the key. Poppy did exactly as Gran instructed. Put the sugar lumps in my tea, and as carefully as you can without making a splash. When she had done this, Poppy stirred the tea. Scrummy, Gran whispered, slurping her tea noisily. Ah, she smacked her lips. Poppy was not impressed. You'll soon find that I am not a proper lady, Poppy, Gran told her, noticing Poppy's quiet disapproval. I don't mean I'm not a girl. I'm definitely very a girl. I mean, I talk with my mouth full. I put my elbows on the table. I like interrupting people. Gran winked at her with one little eye. Poppy didn't know what to say, so she changed the subject. Why do you hide the sugar, Gran? Gran drank some more tea and arranged herself more comfortably. She was wearing a crushed silk robe in a colour she called burnt brandy, topped with a hat that was dappled like a sun-drunk avocado. Poppy's eyes liked the colour. Burnt brandy was a colour that made her think of black coffee, amber, and chestnuts. The hat was similar to a fez and had a tassel that danced around Gran's blossomy hair. Perched on her nose was a pair of brass pince nez framing her glistening sea-green eyes. Poppy liked looking at her grandma's armchair. It was furrowed and patched and dotted with hundreds of glistening pins. Gran always said she got all her best ideas while sitting in that chair. She called it the seat of wisdom. Gran was a seamstress and could make any wearable thing you wanted. Think of a costume now, she could make it. A scaled sea monster, the robes of a golden sultan, a goblin made of nothing but leaves and wind. She worked through the night, her long fingers stitching and milling like a spider. Although Gran wasn't famous, her costumes were. You could always tell if she'd made something by the tiny initials she'd embroider into the lining. T.H. The sugar must be kept locked up, Gran said simply, which was no real answer at all. Then she changed the subject with insect-like speed. I moved to Suds 46 years ago when I was 22. The people here aren't any kinder or meaner than any other town. The library doesn't have better books, the post doesn't come any faster, and the mutton pies are just as delicious as the ones 2 towns over. I didn't come here for any of that. I came to Suds for cloth. Gran took another sip from her cup, and when her pursed lips pulled away they created a little ripple in her tea. There is no better cloth in the whole wide, wonderful world than the cloth they make in Suds. Poppy cradled her cocoa and nestled up beside Gran's velvet slippers. I've seen cloth that changes colour like a cuttlefish, and fabric that crumbles like ancient stones but stitches like new satin. Where do they make the cloth? Poppy asked. At the Helligan Mills, just out of town on the river. Miss Miss Crink at the fabric shop says that once a week, on a Tuesday morning, bolts of the most exquisite cloth float down the river in a crate, which stops at the brook beside her shop. There is never any left over, because the perfect amount is always made, not an inch more or less. Who makes it? That, her grandmother said, remains a mystery. She thought for a bit. Your mum wouldn't like me telling you this, but since she isn't with us any more, I'll make those decisions now, so I'm going to tell you. Gran cleared her throat and opened a tin of syrupy peaches sat beside her. Many years ago, before there were street lamps and car horns, there opened a famous fabric mill in Suds. Merchants came from all over the world to buy their fabric. Nothing was impossible, no colour too specific, no texture too complex. You could take them a toadstool and they'd weave you a red and white spotted fabric, with an undesirable of pleated bone muslin that was so fine you'd think they'd plucked it from a witch's supply cupboard. They made of a voile so light you could drape it on a ghost. How did they make it? Poppy wondered if perhaps Gran was exaggerating a little. Gran finished off the last peach and drank the juice from the tin. Okay, so her grandma sounds like a typical grandma, doesn't she? um, Task 1, what I'd like you to do today. What evidence can you find in the text to show that Poppy's Gran is demanding? There should be lots of pieces of evidence for this from what I've read. Task 2, we've done this in class before. Perched on her nose was a pair of brass pince nez, framing her glistening sea-green eyes. So first of all, I want you to write for me 6 synonyms, 6 other words that mean glistening. So think about the word class, unlock it, what does that tell you? And then have a go at ranking them on this line here. So from words that tell me something's really, really shiny to something not being very shiny, and you should be able to plot them on this line. Task 3, find and copy 5 opinions from the text. So remember, when we think about opinions, we think about adjectives, so that should be quite easy for you to do, thinking we've done that a lot this year. And task 4, summarise the text so far in your own words, in no more than 30 words. So that's based on all of the lessons this week. So the whole story so far, summarise the text in your own words, but no more than 30. As I said at the beginning, comment underneath to tell me that you've done the lesson or post it on Twitter. But I look forward to seeing all of your work. You're doing really, really well. Keep it up, and remember, you can go back to the text and listen to it as much as you want to find the answers. But have a great day, all of you, and take care.